And it also allows you the opportunity to market yourself. You have a presence in the market that you're in. If you're working with buyers, this is the way I think about it. I feel like you're an undercover agent. But the only person that really knows you're the real estate agent is the client that you have in the car with you. Where when you're, a listing agent, everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows that you're affiliated, that that's your business. And that you're absolutely right. For every one listing you have, you should get 2 buyer leads from it. So as you start your real estate career, always remember that, don't shy away from a listing. The listing is really what you want to master, and then the buyers will then come. So just so that I get to know a little bit of people here in the room, and can you just, tell me your name, give me a little bit of background about yourself, and why real estate? Yeah. Yep. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Good. Well, welcome. Got it a little bit. Mm-hmm. Right. It's not out of the ordinary to get your real estate license because you want to understand the process. When we were lucky enough to be stationed in Hawaii for 5 years, and we were looking at buying our first home. And I got my real estate license in Hawaii. I knew I wasn't going to be hanging it anywhere or starting a business. I had little ones, and I was staying home with my girls. But I wanted to understand the process. And a lot of people will get into this business because, one, they have had a big horror story with their first agent, or they want to understand it. Now, fast forward, I've actually have used as a military spouse. I've used the ability to purchase property in every different location it's been in. Some I've sold, some I've kept, but it's become a wealth opportunity for me, to now think about it as an investment. And so right now we own 3 homes. Sometimes it's challenging, sometimes it's a benefit, right? But I tell my husband, because he'll tell me like, oh, we just need to sell the properties. And I'm like, but that's my wealth. At the end of your 20 years in the military, you're going to have an awesome retirement plan. This is my retirement plan, and it's something that's doable. So it allows you to think bigger. It allows you the opportunity that if we have access to a bunch of data that tells us where the market is, why wouldn't you use it to build your own wealth? A lot of people say, well, I want to work with investors, and who are the investors? So anyhow, I'm so happy to be here with you guys and, get to know you and spend the day with you, at least half the day. So let's go ahead and get started. So I know that Shane, mentioned a little bit about, today's expectations, and it's really, having the ability to understand the tools and the processes that are available to you through Keller Williams, in order to go and have a great, confident listing appointment. And the thing is that if you're lead generating, like you should be through Ignite, at the end of Ignite, you should have 200 contacts in your database. Anything from, your past sphere of influence to past clients to, family members, anybody that you think is in your world should be an e-edge already. There should be a drip campaign that should be hitting them automatically, right? I mean, the process with Keller Williams is that we want you to use the tools because they work. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. and be consistent about it and do it every day, because that's really when you start seeing the results. And during my last class last week, we started talking about farming campaigns, and a lot of people think that it's easy and we should just throw some money on there and see if it works. I don't necessarily recommend. I strongly feel that you should start with your sphere of influence first. Build your solid foundation to your business, and as your business grows, then you implement a lot of that farming campaigns and internet leads. I wouldn't do that before you solidify that sphere. And then I always say financially it's a commitment, so you can't do it once and then skip 6 months and then do it again. If you don't have the means to do it once a month for 12 months, then wait, and then budget that into your, budget. But today it's, really understanding the activities that are necessary for you to have, a good listing presentation. If there's one thing that, I want to challenge you with, is definitely learning the scripts and the dialogues associated with, the pre-listing packet, seller objection. That's huge, because I don't think that, there's a great opportunity that you may go in there and knock it out of the ballpark and get the seller to sign with you and list with you. But a lot of times they still have concerns. In a market as competitive as ours, it's very natural for them to be to interview a couple of agents before they make up their mind. So it's really about going in there, being confident, knowing the scripts, almost anticipating the objections that you think may come from the seller, and already being prepared, to answer those back. So, again, continue to work on, your contacts. I know that you guys are cappers in training, and they're going to hold you accountable to adding, all those people to your database. Continue to, lead generate. And, sometimes people push back on scripts. They're like, oh, it's like cold calling. And I'm like, it's really not. It's really about learning how to have a structured conversation. When I first started in this industry, I didn't have as many resources as, Keller Williams offers a lot of the new agents. And so I would ask, people to go and have coffee, and I'd spend an hour with them, and I still didn't know whether they were interested in buying or selling real estate. Well, there's a little gap. But through the scripts and the dialogues, if you have an accountability partner in the office that you can practice with, that is the best thing, because somebody's listening to you, providing honest feedback, and it goes back and forth. And it's about making each of you better, right, when you're in front of a customer or client. And so, and if not, I always tell new agents, record yourself. Just record yourself every day reading this, the script. Nobody's going to critique you. You're going to be the only one to hear yourself. And you'll start seeing that each time you record yourself, you get better and better. I remember clearly being at a lunch appointment, and, when I finally gave into the mindset that I needed to learn script. And I remember sitting in front of my friend, we were having lunch, and I said my script, and it came out so naturally that, and, I didn't want to, show, all the excitement I had in my face, but I'm like, oh my God, I just said that. Like, oh my God, And I ended up walking away from the And so, they're there for a reason. They're there because they work. It's a powerful conversation that you're having. And, when we have lead generation levers that are a website, right? And so a lot of our newer agents will be like, oh, but I feel like I'm bothering them. And I'm like, when a lead comes in on the internet, it's somebody raising their hand saying, I need information. I want information, and you may be able to assist me. So think about it that way. Same thing in open houses. You should already start doing open houses, so you have a sense of what it is to have a conversation face-to-face with people walking in. You already know that it's either going to be a neighbor that's going in to preview the property because they're kind of curious about their own value. Is that a great contact? Yes, because they may want to list. Right? And two, people coming in are people that are interested and are buyers. They're motivated buyers, and that, I don't think they would be showing up on a Sunday, especially during football playoff time, to look at property. In this area, a lot of people think that real estate is seasonal. It's not in this area. I can guarantee you that. I think we've had a very strong November and December, and starting the year already, thinking it's like, springtime, because there's more demand for buyers, and there is really listings right now. So you're still seeing multiple offer situations. I think the interest rates are still relatively low, and the people that are looking now are very motivated to find something, to start the year. So put yourself out there. Put your name badge, give your business cards, and start having real estate conversations. And let it go where it needs to go in order to build your pipeline. Handwritten notes, so powerful. I get excited when I get a letter in the mail that's handwritten. So one of the things that you should be doing after each open house is actually, hi, good morning, is going immediately back into that sign-in sheet. However, you're getting those contacts, whether it's through Open House Pro or a regular paper sign-in sheet, and put those into e-edge right away and send a thank you card. One of the things that I've noticed, because every time that I teach, Ignite changes and the curriculum is updated, and I see that already built in are the exact thing you need to be saying, verbatim. So there's really, it should be an easy process for you to be able to knock out 6 or 7 thank you cards after an open house. So crucial. But let's talk about getting ourselves getting in the mindset of being that listing agent. That's really the way that, one, you're going to be able to have more time and more money, and 2, when you think about and for a lot of people this may not be the case, but if you have a plan that in 5 years you want to start your own team, this is the first step to get there, by being a solely listing agent. Like Shane said at the beginning, you'll take listings, buyers, rentals. I really think of, especially referrals, I think of those as, I don't care if they're a $150,000 townhouse or a $1.7 million. I'm going to treat them the same because it's about the relationship. And rental, same thing. As clients, he was a $1.7 million listing that was a referral from an agent in Bob's team in Ellicott City, Maryland. And we sold his beautiful home in Great Falls for, I think 1.67. Sold it in 25 days. Now they're separating, so each person needs to find their own home. And he just called and said, hey, my ex-wife needs to look at properties, and they're interested in, she's interested in these. She's looking at buying. And I'm looking at buying, but down the road, in the next 6 months. So, you treat, you give your clients high, customer service, and they will continue to come back. They'll see you as the only resource for all their real estate needs, so think about that. Now, when we talk about, the listing presentation, Keller Williams has really set out to give you the tools that are necessary for you to have a great listing presentation, and it's starting with understanding what the pre-listing packet is and what the listing presentation is. It should be different. I like delivering a pre-listing packet, and not necessarily, and you could email it if you're familiar with the home, but if you're unfamiliar with the home, what better way for you to go by and take a preliminary look at the property? If maybe you're unfamiliar with the neighborhood, for you to drive around a neighborhood, to look at what type of community amenities, major highways, directions to get there. And so I really love to go and just deliver it. I think, one, it shows that you're just going the extra mile. Most agents will probably just mail it or email it out, but when you show up and you show your face and say, I'm really looking forward to meeting you, or coming back to meet with you to discuss the sale of your home, I just wanted to personally come by and drop this, pre-listing packet. I think it shows, a lot more value there to the client, that you've gone the extra mile. I always use the pre-listing packet as more of an introduction to myself, my history, my professional curriculum, my team. It talks a lot about us, because when I get to the listing appointment, it's all about them. And I should be asking more questions, and I should, be just telling them how, we all think we're awesome, right? How awesome we are, and who we are, and why we're number one. And, it's really about being here, coming from a servient heart, and really understanding at a very high level why they're looking to sell, right? I had a gentleman that came into my office in Arlington when I was a team leader, and said he was coming in from Long and Foster, been there for a long time, and he said, I'm so excited. I just got my first listing, with Keller Williams. And I'm like, that's fantastic. Tell me about it. And he's like, well, it was a past client. I sold them their house at Capitol Hill in D.C., and now they need to sell. I'm like, great. Well, why are they selling? And he said, well, unfortunately, been ill. She's got cancer, and now they have to move back to Seattle. They need her family support, be around family. And I said, well, have you found them an agent in Seattle yet? And he said, what? He looked at me so confused, and I'm like, yeah. Did you find him an agent? I said, Keller Williams is a worldwide company. What value would you show your clients that not only are you going to help them sell the property in DC, but that you've gone through the trouble and interviewed every agent in Seattle and found them the best agent? I said, think about it. In that circumstance, in that family circumstance, it's not a great move for them. And the fact that you can have somebody take care of them when they get there right off the plane shows that you care about them, right? And then you're not just invested in the transactional relationship, but in the personal relationship. So he said, well, can you kind of coach me through it? And so I told them, interview 3 or 4 agents. Now they make it so easy. There's Facebook groups. There's all sorts of social media groups to help support agents and referral relationships. And so he did. He ended up finding them an agent, and he said, my clients are over the moon. That when they got there in one weekend, the agent was there at the airport picking them up, showing them the properties. They ratified on a house, and I was able to help them, sell the property in DC. So those are the types of, things that you want to do to be able to impress your clients, right? So that they not once think about maybe going somewhere else to try to get that information. You want to be the resource for vendors and, anybody, anything in real estate. They should be calling you. So you should have that information. Now, last week or in session 3, we talked about leads, right? And how those are important because it's filtering the pipeline for you, right? And ideally, if you're doing your lead generation, then you already have a pipeline that's building up. I like to think about it as kind of boiling there. It's kind of cooking in there, right? So now one of the leads comes through, and now you're able to get that appointment, right? And appointments are important because what you get with an appointment is hopefully a commitment to them being listed. And when they list with you, then chances are that you're going to ratify that contract, and at the end of the day, that's revenue income for you, right? This is the way that we earn a living, by helping other people. I have one closing this week and one closing at the end of the month. And gosh, I tell you, I still get excited. I still get excited that I get to sit at the closing table with my clients, A lot of my business right now, believe it or not, is still coming from Texas. My husband's in the National Guard, in the Army, and he's actually tied to a Texas unit. And he had a buddy of his relocate into this area because guess what? Now he has to be at the Pentagon. I helped him find a rental last year. I got him into an apartment, right? Does it, give you a lot of revenue? No, but it's about the service. And just about a month and a half ago, we're looking to buy. We're going to be here for 3 more years. And so we go to Fredericksburg, right? A good hour away. And we go into this beautiful new home community. And the sales rep comes out, and he's like, he sees me pull up in my car with my Texas tags, and my client is pulling up in his monster truck with his Texas tags. And the gentleman comes out and he says, wow, did you manage to find the only agent from Texas and Virginia to represent you? I'm like, it really is your sphere of influence. It really is. So anyhow, I'm really happy to, to help him close on his property because I know that, that will then generate more business for me down the road. But the pre-listing packet and the listing presentation, I always tell, agents, do it now. Work on it now because what ends up happening is when you get your first seller lead, you're unprepared if you don't already put the time into it now, right? So right now is a perfect time for you to really put the time in to, learn the pre-listing packet, to, have a conversation. Keller Williams makes it very easy to have that as, as like a flow chart and how you're going to focus on that, because it is so important. I think it shows not only your representation of your own brand, but of the company that you're affiliated with. And so, I think eEdge does a phenomenal job of having that preset, pre-listing and listing package. And basically all you have to go is go in eEdge and start personalizing it with your contact information, your website. Think about your own value proposition. I think each one of us brings a very distinct background, you know, that you can use as value, maybe your, you know, background and the industry that you were in, you know, being that you've traveled, you know, throughout the world. You know, a lot of people will shy from actually putting the work in it because they're like, oh, well, I'll just wait until I get a real lead, and then I'm going to do it. Well, by then it's too late. You know, I mean, do you really want to start your career being unprepared and kind of flustered, or do you put the time in now, have it ready, so that if I called, you know, Gina, you said? Jana, you know, today, I think I need to sell my house because you're my neighbor, I want you to sell it, that you would be over there in 5 seconds and be already prepared, as opposed to tap dancing, oh, I got to get it done. So, you know, just urgency is now. So we focus on listings for 3 main reasons. And we talked about this, but, you know, for those that walked in a little late, listings are going to give you more exposure. You know, I think it's the easiest way to, you know, I think expedite your business from the get-go. You know, you're going to have just listed. If there's a marketing process in place, once you get that listing, your sign's out there, right, for sale. It's your contact information. Come Saturday, we typically do listings go live on Thursdays for us. We have a 5-day blitz because Thursdays is really when people start thinking about what they're going to do for the weekend. So we want to be, you know, brand new on the market on the Thursday. We have door knocking activities, and we start promoting a lot of our open houses through social media on Fridays. Saturdays and Sundays, open house, and Monday, I want to be negotiating a contract. So it's crucial to go in that 5-day. If you go in on Monday or Tuesday, then you've been on the market a little while, that you start forgetting about all the activities that you have to do to have a successful open, right? So we do that. But our signs are out there. Directionals, you know, are out there on Friday evening after 5 o'clock, depending on jurisdiction. Always make sure that you research that. Already promoting the open house. Saturday, if you're doing an open house on Sunday, it's probably door knocking to the neighborhood. One of the cute activities that I did for one of my listings in Burke is I sent an invitation for a neighborhood open. Right, I wanted to make it an event, a party. I had a lender, you know, co-sponsor it with me, and I sent it out. I sent actual invitations. I sent it out to the neighborhood, and believe it or not, everybody that showed up that was a neighbor showed up with their invitation. It's almost like they felt like they had to have it in order to walk into the house. They're like, oh, I got the invitation. I'm here to look at the house. You know, so think of creative ways that you can, you know, make your open house an activity, an event. Make it fun. Some people right now with football playoffs are doing a football-themed open, right? And they're showing the game. And usually you see the guys, you know, staying in the living room watching the game, and the ladies are the ones previewing the properties, you know. So anyhow, a lot more exposure through listings. You know, listings are going to bring you buyers. For every listing you have, 2 buyers. I think I've had, gosh, 4 or 5 buyers come from, you know, from a couple of the listings that we've had. And chances are that even if that's not the house that they want, if you're able to have that conversation with them, they're going to work with you. And you're going to help them go find that next house, you know. And then the time that you get back through having a listing, I think ideally you can only work with maybe 3 or 4 buyers at a time, just with the amount of time you're spending with them on a weekend showing a property, showing them properties, right? If they're really motivated, they're going to find something really, really quickly. And you'll give them a top 5, and then we select the one after that, right? But for the most part, it is time consuming to be working with buyers. Listings, if you do a phenomenal listing presentation, they sign with you, you're coordinating photography, lockbox, pictures, you know, sign, post, and you're basically done, right? Once it goes into MLS, somebody's coming to you. So you've got a product to sell, and people want to buy it. So you're attracting buyers. You're attracting other agents to come look at your property. Do the broker opens, because you do get, you know, a lot of feedback from those, especially when you take on a little bit of a challenging listing, maybe the condition of the property, maybe the price. You think you're a little too high on the price. Having a broker open and having your colleagues come in and give you feedback on the property not only validate maybe what you think you should be listing the price, but it then shows, you know, that you're providing feedback to your seller, and it's not your personal opinion, but it's, the industry opinion of where the market is, right? So do take advantage of those. And I guess now we're going to start with video number 1. So develop your listing skills.
Hi, my name is Gene Rivers, and I'm here today to tell you how to develop your listing skills to a very high level, and after you've done that, you'll be able to go in and take over market share. Number 1, the best source for listing leads is from your sphere and past client list. The fact is, the people you know the people that are going to be moving, whether it's at church, school, work, friends, relatives. Focus on making sure they understand you're in the listing business. Create a pre-listing package that you would give every seller, but rename it your guide to selling homes successfully in your market. And then give that to people in your database that you know have influence, that's collateral materials that they can give to their friends and refer you. Step 2, focus on an area, product, or price range. When you develop mastery of a product or an area, you will much more quickly succeed in those areas. And in that area or in that product or price range, focus on the FSBOs in that area, the expireds in that area, door knock in that area, geographic farm in that area, and I'm talking a fairly tight area, so that the people in that area will really, really identify with you as someone who can help them sell property for top dollar with low hassle in a short amount of time. Now we're at number 3. Everyone today that's looking at hiring an agent, whether it's a referral, even a past client, or a stranger who's gotten your name somehow, they're going to check you out on the web. So you need to make sure that your website is competent, that you've got basic, powerful content in there, and specifically that on the landing page, the very opening page, there is a direct offering to a seller. Find out what your home is worth, get a guide to selling your home. But if you don't do that, you're going to miss opportunities because people will get your name, check your website out, and go, I don't think so. I've seen a lot better sites. Fix your website with a database that you are working on a consistent basis. And with a tight focus, you build your reputation. If you're visible, you will find you will take over more and more listings, and in a very short amount of time, in 12 to 24 months, you will own that market. That's how you take market share.
That's very true. He came and taught in our market center, maybe a year and a half ago. And he was sharing a story, Gene Rivers was sharing a story that when he first moved to Tallahassee, he really wanted to own the farm where he lived, right? And I think for everyone here in the room, like that should be your primary focus right now, because you live in the area, you know your neighbors, they know you. And he said that when he went into this farm, everybody else kept telling him, you shouldn't go into that farm. So-and-so dominates it, been in that neighborhood for a long time. Well, I mean, it doesn't say that I can't farm in that area, only because there's, dominant agents that are market there. So what he started doing is he started sending the direct mailers once a month, and then he would door knock, and then he would actually, when he got his first listing, he would door knock to let everybody know that he had the listing. Then when he ratified, a contract, he went back and door knocked to share with everybody that he just ratified the contract. When he closed, he went back and door knocked, and within 3 months had driven that agent out of that farm, right? But because he was showing up, and people recognized him, got to know him every time he would knock on the door. It's Gene again, right? And he said, so don't ever think that if you never live in a neighborhood that somebody dominates, that you can't get market share, because there's really clients for everyone, and it's just, you have to make sure that you're consistent, that you're, it's, like he said, it's very dense, it's very small, but that's what you want. You don't want to spread out so wide that you don't make a big, invention in that market. And so one of the things that you should do is, when you start thinking about hosting open houses, think about the farm that you want to be in. If it's in your neighborhood, then look for listings in your neighborhood that you can host open. right? Because then it's easier to promote it since you live in it. And so, and then continuously do that, time and time again, and people will start recognizing you. It took me my first listing, and it was in Texas, and take it, I was a brand new agent. Average sales price was like $129,000. And so here, we're looking at such a healthy market, of an average sales price of $500,000. And I remember, hosting my first open house, and neighbors coming in, and I would do it every weekend, right? It was my only listing, so I was going to put all of my effort in it. And before you knew it, I sold that one, and they referred me. He was a police officer for Austin. He referred me to another buddy that was a police officer that worked in that, that lived in that neighborhood. And then that gentleman referred me to a firefighter, that was a good friend of his that was selling. And so before you knew it, it creates this like domino effect, right? And that's how organically we gain market share, because by then I had 4 or 5 listings in the same neighborhood, right? And my signs were out there. Now, I didn't have a lot of money, so it was, my brokerage signs, but it had my name. I would put my name on them. That's the stuff that I kind of invested in, and it only takes one, right? And then the just listed come out, the just sold come out. So before you know it, they're seeing you in person, they're seeing you door knock, they're seeing your stuff everywhere. They've done your just listed, now they got the just sold. And so it can create, some powerful market share for you. So, it's good to go after those listings. So pre-listing, packet and higher impact listing presentations, they're going to work hand in hand. And again, you should be using them together, but if you just want to do an amazing listing presentation, then, that's good too. Just remember that when you get to the listing appointment, it's more about the client and less about like me, right? When you're having those conversations. You want to be able to pre-qualify the sellers to understand their motivation. I had, interestingly enough, 2 great examples. So we have lead generation levers that are predictive analytics that we work with. And so we had ISAs that would call inside sales agents to get listing appointments for us. So I was really excited because they were calling my farm, where I live. And, I got 2 listing appointments. And I didn't, the ISAs scheduled them for me, so I show up. And I'm glad that I went, because I wouldn't have never met these neighbors, right? We weren't in the same circles, just different lifestyles. And I went to the listing presentation and was having great conversation with them. And then we talked about timing, right? Well, when do you think you'd want to list a property? And she said, well, in about 5 years. I'm like, well, so for me, that was a learning opportunity, because I'm like, well, this CMA is not going to work. And so sometimes when you start investing in lead generation levers that are, listing data and predictive analytics, you're really building a larger pipeline, because these people, both clients that I met with, both are not going to sell in between 3 to 5 years from now. So that would have, asking the right questions from our ISAs would have told us that timing wasn't right away. But the good thing with that, I always look at it from a learning opportunity. The good thing with that is that, so if I do a really good job nurturing these 2 leads, then when they're ready to sell, they're going to list with me, right? And so it's really about, once you make that contact and you identify that they are going to be sellers, no matter what the timeline is, that you're constantly nurturing them. And that's why using e-edge is so important, because a lot of it is going to be done automatically without you even having to do anything, but you're staying top of mind. And so that's definitely the way to go. And you want to position yourself as an expert. People that want to do business with you trust you, right? And they're trusting you with the biggest investment that they'll make ever. And so for sellers, can you sell it in the shortest amount of time for the most amount of money, right? There's going to be some times where, and it's going to happen to each and every one of you, it's happened to me, where you want the listing so bad that you sometimes take an overpriced listing. One of the things that I've learned is that if I know I really want that listing and I understand that it's going to be slightly overpriced, I have a very transparent and open conversation with my clients. And I will tell them, we'll list it at your price, but, for 30 days. But if in the first 2 weeks I don't get any activity as far as showings or buyer leads, anything, then you are already agreeing to a price reduction. And most of them will tell you that that's okay. They just want to try, but they're willing to work with you, right? But if you don't have that conversation up front with them and you take the overpriced listing and you're sitting there after 30 days, it's, then it would be a little uncomfortable for you to have to bring the price reduction conversation up, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing that up front. Again, in a competitive market like ours, it's a big reality that you'll probably go into a listing presentation competing with another 3 or 4 agents that they're going to be interviewing. So the more confident you are with your listing presentation, then, the higher, the percentage that you'll get the listing. And then, it definitely allows you to, focus on setting timelines, understanding how to do a high quality CMA. One of the things that you'll learn probably at boot camp is how to do a CMA, but don't just take this learning, continue to improve your skills in that, because some houses in this area are very unique. So unlike a cookie planned master community, which, the builder only built 4 models, they're pretty much all the same, offering the same upgrades. In this area, there's architects, there's custom builders, there's, it's a whole different industry here. So you want to make sure that you can actually price a property accordingly. Because sometimes the comparables are going to be a little bit more difficult to find. Especially like Arlington, where, you're basically getting a lot and you're making a custom home out of it. Not so much out in Loudoun or, Ashburn area, Leesburg area, where you have these master plan communities, but more inside the city in the pockets. So NVAR offers amazing MRIS training. I think we're going into a new MRIS. I think it's called Bright. And so why not learn it from the get-go and start taking those classes there? A lot of times they offer basic 101 classes, as a new agent, and then they all start adding, like advanced features to it. So as a new agent, I would always go take the class, play with it, and then sign up for the next class, and then go back and take it, because that's really where you're going to be able to get the data that you need to price a listing accordingly. So the more comfortable you are with that system, the better. And then, the pre-listing packet also allows you to, have mutual expectations with your sellers. When I go into a listing appointment, I always tell them that we're a team and that together, we're going to sell the house. Because if they're not uncooperative, they make it difficult to show the property, they're stubborn about list price, then you already know that that's not a win-win relationship, right? So you want to make sure that you have a very clear expectation with them. How to pre-qualify, the seller. So you definitely want, to get important information. Why are they moving? What's their time frame? Where are they moving to? Because there you have a great opportunity to get the referral for the buy side, when they move. Are they qualified? Do they need to be pre-qualified with the seller? And then really, I use the pre-listing form on the next page, on page 14. Use it. I actually have with me pre-listing forms in my briefcase. I've got listing agreements ready to go, because if somebody called me from here to the office and they wanted to sell their house, I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. Because you definitely want, that the crucial information. And these questions are pretty standard in regards to getting the information that you need. How did you hear about me? You want to know, was this a referral? Did you find me online? You want to be able to start tracking where people are finding you. Where are you moving? What's motivating your move there? Is it job related? Is it family? You want to make sure that you understand the reasons behind it. How soon do you need to be there, right? If we sell your home in the next 30 days, what that poses a problem for you. A lot of people may give themselves 30 to 60 days, maybe 90 days to get the house sold, but they don't have anywhere to go just yet. So, when you get a contract on that home, it may not even be the price that gets them to agree, but the terms. If the buyer is willing to work with his terms and being in the house, with the lease back for at least 30 days, then for the seller, that's really more value than maybe getting a couple more $1,000, in offers. What would happen if your home did not sell, right? I mean, are they financially prepared to maybe carry 2 mortgages? Or this tells you they may need to do a home contingency purchase on the house they're buying. Property. Sellers want to know how much they're going to take home, right? They want to know how much they're going to net. A lot of times, this is where they'll start talking to you about reducing your commission, right? And so I'm a big advocate. I mean, here it's negotiable. You know, you look at the standard for MRIS, but I never like to discount my commission because not that I wouldn't want to work with a client. However, if you discount your commission up front and you get a ratified contract and maybe during home inspection something comes up and your $2,000 difference and your seller doesn't want to give in and the buyer doesn't want to give in, that allows me the opportunity to hold on to the deal to make it work. You know, even if I have to financially contribute a little. I have a listing in Manassas, stubborn sellers that didn't want to renegotiate, or reduce the price. We got ratified on our contract, and it was a garage door that needed to be repaired. Well, I'll pay the $200 to get that door repaired in order to make that deal work. I've already invested all this time and effort into that listing. What I want to do is I want to get it to closing. So, again, there's going to be times where you'll have to think about those situations, but don't commit to discounting your commission up front because you're almost tying your hands, down the road. Or you end up making way less more money than you anticipated. And then, you can tell them, I'm going to be stopping by to drop off the pre-listing packet. If you're not there, that's fine. I'll leave it on the porch. Just wanted to, deliver it personally. Gene Rivers does that. And of course, now he's gone to a point where he has a delivery service take it. And he does a real pretty, gift box. And so he'll put in treats in there. And it's almost like a gift to the seller without even sitting in front of him just yet. So it really wows, his clients. And then he'll follow up the listing presentation after he's done the listing appointment with edible arrangements think about all the little wow factors, But you lead with revenue, so this is something to work towards. It doesn't have to be, right now. And then ask them, do you have any questions before we meet? Is there anything that, I can answer before we meet? Sometimes they're curious. They might want to know a little bit more about you. If my clients told me, oh, well, I'm from Texas, well, oh, I'm from Texas too. So you start looking for those common things that will tie you together, right? And then will all the decision makers be there? This is so important, especially, as difficult as it sounds, especially when you're dealing with divorced couples. This tends to be a little bit of a problem, but you want to make sure that when you're having this expectations conversation that they're both there. Right? You don't want the information to be miscommunicated and the wife is hearing one thing and the ex has something else. So you want to make sure that everybody's there. A great way to find out who the decision makers are is pull the tax records. You're going to know exactly how many owners own that property. When it comes to estate sales, this is gets a little bit more into the weeds of things, but there might be an attorney that's that is taking care of that whole transaction for the family and the estate. And then just reconfirm, the time and the date that you're going to be meeting with them. I would actually even call the day before just to confirm, right? Things happen, life happens, just assume that they'll put it on their calendar and just always make sure. So what does the pre-listing look like? One, it's going to be, again, a lot of the marketing materials that you're going to want to talk about Keller Williams. A lot of the newer agents will say well, but I don't have a lot of experience. Well, no, but you're affiliated with a great brokerage. And when you talk about yourself, talk about it from the brokerage perspective, right? If Falls Church is number 1 in market share, my office, my Keller Williams office, we are number 1 in market share. And we sell houses on the average of, 16 days on market. Most of our listings, this is where you go back and you take the power of your team that you're surrounded by and you show the value there, Organically, once you start building your business, then you'll start talking more about your production and your days on market, But for now, that's the value. That's the message that you're going to convey to your clients. Yeah, so it should be about, information about your team. If it's not your team, I'm sure Sheila does a really good job of like posting market updates. Use that as part of it. And then, like Gene Rivers said, it's a guide, to helping your seller understand or your client understand what the process is. For some people that are more seasoned, maybe they'll skim through it, because they've already sold 5 houses, 6 houses, But for, first-time sellers, this is a great piece to work, kind of educate them on the process. And it just tells you, it's all about the seller, right? We talked about that. You want to provide them excellent customer service, taking the time to understand their wants and needs. So it's basically a structured, approach to saying, okay, look, I'm here to provide you amazing service from listing, to closing, right? I'm going to list your property. I'm going to market it effectively. And once we're under contract, from ratification to close, I'm going to be part of this process. Get comfortable getting on the phone and calling people. With my buyer right now, we are pre-approved through the, a lot of these builders want you to use their preferred lender and their preferred mortgage brokers because they get incentives, right? The buyer gets incentives. And I've had such a challenging time because I feel like as a lender, you should be keeping me in the loop of what's going on. Like, appraisal was received and, and I've been the one having to call, and follow up and follow up and follow up because I'm not part of that process, right? So communication is key. It's good to communicate when you're the listing agent with the buyer agent, making sure that you're both are working towards getting, the transaction. Sometimes I've even, as a listing agent, I've gone to the house to meet, the listing or the buyer agent out there or one of his vendors because he was tied up, right? So it just shows the teamwork, and working not only with the other person on the other side, but, because you're doing it for the client, for both my client and the buyer. Advertising, so number one, my real estate business is built around and guiding principles. It's all about you. Like when you hear that, doesn't it make you feel good? Like, oh, wow, they're really going to take care of me. Taking the time to understand your wants and needs, helping you obtain the highest possible price, right? In this market, I mean, sometimes if you price the property accordingly, you can get over asking price. What seller wouldn't be happy that you got more money than what it was listed for? Advertising and staging the property. I'm sure you guys have contacts or vendor relationships here in the market center, but staging is huge in this area. And when I mean staging, it's a lot of people think, oh, well, they're just going to throw furniture in there and it's going to be super expensive. I work with an amazing home stager, and she is part of every listing presentation that I do because, one, my team actually covers, the consultation for her to go out there, but she walks through the house, and a lot of times as the listing agent, you're walking around making notes of like things, that you would recommend or, any improvements that they've made in the house since they've been there. You want to be able to learn, those type of things. But when it comes to like maybe painting and fixtures and updating, and decluttering is huge. Especially for a lot of the residents that have been here for a very long time. Just like anybody, we start acquiring a lot of stuff. And so one of the things that she does is she'll do that consultation after, I already have the signed agreement. And she'll go out there and she will tell them anything from, takes her, provides the sellers with a report that says, maybe the lighting fixtures need to be replaced. And so she'll give them options of like maybe from Home Depot, an option from a lighting company, painting colors. She won't just say paint the kitchen. She'll tell you paint the kitchen, Sharon Williams, R blah, blah. Like she'll give them the exact shade. And so it becomes this punch list of priorities for the seller. And so it does become a teamwork when you're sitting and you're going, okay, are we ready to get on the market? Did you, do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And the homes sell a lot faster, when you have that touch. We actually don't furnish any like vacant properties. But except, if they're the higher price points because the rooms are so big, the houses are like massive, you do definitely want to put furniture in there because people will get lost with so much space. But for the ones that are occupied, we do, sometimes we will tell the seller to, because a lot of times the stagers can work with the existing furniture that's there, and just supplement. But most of the time, it's just really clearing the house, of a lot of the personal touches that are in there and making the rooms look bigger. And so, one of the things that as you're starting your career now, I would advise you and coach you to do is start interviewing different home stagers, start interviewing home inspectors, any vendor that is going to be involved in your business. Start having those relationships, start building those relationships now, so that you can start creating your core team, around you. The other thing that I would do, and that I did, and it helped me a lot, and when I first got started, is I actually scheduled a mock closing before my first closing. I didn't even have a seller yet, or a buyer, but I wanted to make sure I understood the process of the settlement, from the beginning of a ratified transaction and what the title company does and how they process and all the terminology and the language, even to sitting down at the closing table with like fake closing documents, understanding and reading, all the different disclosures that they have to provide. And it helped me. I mean, the first closing I had, I was cool, calm, and collective because I'd already been through a closing myself, as practice. So that helps definitely do that. I think it depends on the house, but for the most part, they should have like set, unless they're like, yeah. So I think mine is like $350 for the consultation, unless I'm taking her to like Maryland or somewhere far away. Then obviously, I mean, the cost goes up a little bit for the distance. But I mean, for the most part, the listing that I had in Great Falls, it was vacant at the time, and I told my client, I said, Dr. Cody, we have to stage it. It's too big. Like it's 7,000 square feet. And he didn't want to do it. And his house had been on the market before for 6 months without one offer. And so I finally convinced him, to stage it. And we staged it, and we were under contract in 25 days. I mean, it is powerful, And of course, he was like, wow, this looks so different than my house, But stagers, just like a real estate agent, you want to be good at your one thing. They're good at their one thing, right? I would never pretend to want to be a home stager at all, just because I know that I want to get the house sold. Unless you have that background already, you're a home stager, a certified home stager, then that would make sense. But if not, just start building those relationships with home stagers in the area. Coordinate the home showing process. This is huge. Like, if they're living in the house, you want to make sure that you're very clear about times of showings, if weekends are going to be a problem, time frames, do they have pets? You don't understand how many times I walked into a house and there's a dog coming at me and I'm like, oh my God. So you want to make sure that all those, all that detail is super clear. And then presenting offers, it is your obligation and your responsibility as soon as you receive an offer to make that known to the seller. I've received an offer. I think I ratified on Christmas Day on the 25th, and I got an offer. I was at the movies with my family, and as soon as I saw it come in, I kind of skimmed through my phone, and I informed my sellers via text and email. We just received an offer. And your clients respect the fact that you have lives, believe it or not. And I said, I'm at the movies, with my family. As soon as I get back home, I'll give you a call to discuss the offer. And we were on the phone on Christmas Day, and we ratified, and she said, I feel terrible that you're having to work on Christmas Day. And I said, it is my job, right? And it's about providing you, the caliber of service that I'm proud to offer you. And of course, do you think that if I'm going to get referrals from that? Absolutely, right? Because who would have stopped to take care of that on Christmas Day? But again, flexibility, understanding, negotiating. And when we talk about negotiating, I think sometimes there's a misconception that you have to be mean to the other agent because you're negotiating, and it's really not. One of the best pieces of advice I can give you is go to, become active in organizations that are like realtor, industry organizations, like NBAR. I was new to this area. I didn't know anybody 4 years ago. And I showed up at MBAR to volunteer, to take training. Could I do it online? Yes, right? Could I do it on my own? Absolutely. But I wanted to be in an environment where I was meeting other agents. And a lot of times you see people think that, oh, well, they're my competition. They're your colleagues. They're your colleagues. You want to make sure that whether you're Remax, McInerney, Weicker, and you have a listing that you're just struggling with, maybe it's overpriced, maybe, you just want honest feedback from a colleague, that not only can you call the people in your own brokerage, but people to say, you know what, give me a different perspective. Like, what is it that I'm not looking? And a lot of times you end up masterminding with these, amazing people that happen to be in the same industry that you are, maybe just different brokerages. One of my very good friends is like a $40 million producer with Compass. And we meet at least once a quarter and we talk about business, and how's it going and how's it going with you and what can I help you with? And so we'll talk back and forth throughout, we send each other texts. So when you know somebody on the other side, chances are that you're going to work twice as hard to make the deal work, When I met the buyer agent for my listing out in Manassas, I showed up, my Texas tags, and he shows up and he's wearing don't hate me here in the room, but he was wearing a Cowboys like sweatshirt. And I'm a Cowboys fan because I'm from Texas. And we're like, oh, you're from Texas. Turns out that he knew where I'm from, and driving. There's two rival schools, right? The UT Longhorns and Texas Aggies, state schools, and very competitive against each other, the rivals. And so as we're leaving, he like stops the car and he lowers the window right next to mine, and he said, "Now, Carol, if I had known that you were a Texas Longhorn, I don't know if I could have made this deal work," because he was an Aggie, right? And so we laughed about it, and he went on and I went on. But we've been working through this transaction, and we're closing it. Come hell or high water, we're going to work together to get it done, right? So a lot of people just, at the beginning think that negotiations have to be a negative experience. It can be very positive if you come from a high-minded place. And then doing your MRIS training, make sure that you really do understand how to input. If you're doing your own inputting of your listings, make sure you understand that process. For us, that's Keystone until we go into this new Bright MLS. There's classes that are offered at MBAR as well. Make sure that you're comfortable with that process, because once you have that listing and you're doing your own inputting in MRIS, you want to make sure you're doing that accordingly. And there's a lot of fields that need to be updated throughout the transaction as you're, meeting, contingencies that you have to update. So you want to make sure, even when it comes down to even closing, making sure that the buyer, whether you're the listing agent, you're inputting the right buyer contact information, right, for the co-op agent. Now, how ready? So part of getting your listing ready is that you want to understand the market that you're in, right? They're going to be looking at you for all this information. 5 factors affecting the value of the property: recent sales, and that can sometimes be, as we go throughout the year, some of that will change. In the spring, maybe the comps are going to be higher than what you'll see in the fall and winter months, right? So the market does, change. Location is huge, and especially in this area, a lot of times location, and what's important to a lot of the buyers is maybe high school pyramids, right? What school? I know that my listing in Manassas designates to a different high school that people really want to be at, right? If I had been across the street, it would have been a different high school. So making sure that you're understanding, because that's the kind of information that they'll ask you about, at least when you're working with buyers. The condition of the home, right? One of the things that I always ask my sellers is, what improvements have you done to the home since you've owned it? If they have that information, and then in addition to this is, what warranties are still current on the property that will transfer to the new buyers. My listing in Manassas, they had just installed a new roof, with the warranty that will transfer to the new owner. So for the buyer, it was like, oh, wow, I didn't know it was new, and wow, I didn't know that I was going to get a warranty with it. So make sure, that you get as much information. That's also very important for you to add on your MRIS, to have a separate document with like all the recent updates to the house or upgrades or remodel to the house, because then it really educates the buyer agent on the other side what's been done to it. So make sure that and then your competition. As soon as when you get a listing appointment, even if you don't get the listing, the first thing you should do is go and check out the competition in the area. You want to make sure that when you walk in there, for your listing appointment, you know more about the active listings around you than the seller does. Everything about the competition that's out there. And then, the timing. How long is it taking on average for the homes to sell in that particular neighborhood? My listing out in Manassas, it's a very small community, about 30 homes. And so there's not a lot of turnover, so I have to look at surrounding, subdivisions around there. But, that's crucial information because they'll ask you, they're going to ask you, like, well, how long do you think it'll take to sell the house? Well, on average, you're not guessing, right? Based on the comps, the homes are selling, after 23 days on market, right? And so the more information and the more data that you can compile and understand, the better. A lot of times you're going to mirror and match. You'll have some, like, I consider myself to be one of these people, that if you walk in and you make me feel good and you get me excited and I know I can trust you, with the transaction, I probably will sign with you because I don't have a lot of data. My husband on the other side, very analytical, more numbers, more graphs, more data, the happier he is, right? So, and you'll see, as you're seeing couples who's going to be the more analytical, who's going to be the more, and if there's only one seller, then you really have to pay attention to, to that type of feedback. And then understanding how to price the property. Crucial. Especially when we start thinking about these sellers that want to overprice a house. This, on page 18, this graph is something that you should highlight at every listing appointment. It's very visual, very easy to understand. And, what you want to say is, if we price this property accordingly, we're going to get 60% of the buyers that are out there looking at the house, right? That's huge. But if we overprice it, then, we're really cutting, maybe 20 or 30% of the buyers from looking at it. So and obviously if you underprice it, well, that demand is going to be there. You'll probably, look at 75 to 90% of the people looking at the house. So this is, very important to feel comfortable talking to your clients about sellers. Why pricing it accordingly is so important. And then, when you're getting ready to sell, the condition of the home. You need to talk about curb appeal. One of the listings that I have sits on an acre lot, but it sits in the back, right? So there's a huge driveway, massive driveway to take you into the house. That curb appeal, it needed to be right? Because it's going to take them the full attention, to drive down the driveway to know, like, oh, look at the pretty, it's a 3-car garage. Oh, it's got really nice grass and great trees. So you want to make sure that you kind of educate them through the process of having that house ready to go. Sometimes they may want to meet with you and they're meeting with you 6 months before they're ready to pull, the trigger on going live. Right? But they need at least, or maybe a year at times, because they want to actually budget in some remodeling projects that they know are going to generate them more money, right? And what do we say those typically are? Kitchens and bathrooms, right? And they'll tell you, who do you know that would be able to do this type of project for me? And that's why having that vendor list is so important. And so, you want to make sure that the condition of the house is ready to go. Uh-huh. Yes. Yep. Yeah, two, three. And, right now, especially in this area, believe it or not, my neighbors wanted to do a remodel, right, on their home. And at least in Arlington, if you're not knocking a roof and taking it up to another level, a lot of these general contractors, a kitchen remodel is a very small job for them, like, in this time of the year, even in the winter, believe it or not. And so they had a general contractor come out because they wanted to extend the kitchen and do a big family, so they were adding to the house. And if they hadn't asked, they would have been waiting forever. They asked the general contractor, when do you think you can start the job? And the gentleman said, I need to put you back at least 6 months because I'm that backed up. So they're like, no, right? So like you said, if that only been one, forget it, right? In my neighborhood, I've seen a house that had the for sale, and then the builder, the general contractor, came in and put the big sign in front of the house. And I think that sign's been out there for 7 months, and just now they're starting to do work on it, right? So a lot of times it's about timing and how much business they have in the books, and then you have to adapt. So super important, yeah, to have that contact. And you never know the type of relationships that will come from that, right? Because my seller, the one with the garage, I ended up, the house is vacant now. So they called and they said, can you meet the garage door company out there so that they can look at the garage door, see if we need to repair it or replace it, since we're ready to close at the end of the month. So I went out there because it's about a good 45 minutes from me. So I went out this morning and I'm like, yeah, I'll be there at 10 o'clock. Turns out that the gentleman is from El Salvador. Guess what? He's going to buy with me. In the process of sitting out there talking to him about the garage door, he mentioned that he wanted to buy a house. And you have to pick up on the cues that they're giving you when you meet people, even vendors. Because I was getting ready to open the door and I introduced myself and he said, I need to go into the garage to check the condition from the inside. And he turns around and he looks at the house and he's like, this is a very nice house. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It sits on an acre. And so I go into my little showing spiel. And then I said, do you like it? And he's like, yeah. He goes, well, how much is it? And I'm like, well, we were listed at $554. I said, well, are you interested in buying? And he goes, as a matter of fact, I am. And I said, wow. I said, and so we start talking. Where do you want to buy, Lorden? What are you looking at? Maybe an acre. I want a little bit more land. Do you own a house? Yes, I do. And so within like 5 minutes, I'm doing a buyer consultation on the spot. And I said, okay, great. And then he shares that he's the owner of the company. And so I said, great, well, give me a stack of your business cards and I'll give you a stack of mine. I said, and then let's refer business back and forth, right? Because do you think that in my career I'm going to need a garage door repairman? You betcha, right? So think about these relationships as how you can help foster a relationship between each other and your business, Exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Well, and he goes, I worked with a certain agent when I bought my house, but I've never heard from her, since they bought it. And that goes back to what we talked about in session 3. Over 80% of the people that were surveyed through NAR say that they would use an agent again. And only 12 people do because we fail to keep in touch, right? We move on to bigger and better things, and then we forget about the people that actually did business with us. So important, I think probably one of the hardest conversations you'll have with people in regards to listing their home is the decluttering aspect of it, because everything is special to them. Everything in their home is special. And so, that's why I think having a great home stager, have that conversation is great, because then it kind of removes you from the process, yet it allows you to hold them accountable to the recommendations that the home stager, did or had them, commit to. I think it's whether you're coming through to the inside, even the way that you position yourself at an open house says a lot about you and, about the home. I always try to stand right by the front of the door and I thank people for coming. Thank you so much for coming. I give them a quick brief on the house. I'm not one that likes to follow people around. I'll just stay situated. If you have any questions, let me know. Only from a safety perspective, again, for us that are new to the industry, it's always great to take like a realtor safety class on just how to set up an open house, making sure that you're not barricading yourself in the home should something happen, because you will have weirdos that will come in. I mean, what we have signs all over the place saying, "Come here, I'm right here." And I'm going to be here from 2 to 4. So make sure that, you either let somebody know where you're at. A lot of times my husband will stop by the open house, if I'm going to be here from 2 to 4 or 1 to 3, just to make sure, that I'm okay. So it's always good to think safety first, And, it talks about having the house tidied up. You want to look at it through a buyer's eyes, not through the seller's eyes, right? So when you're doing your walkthrough in the property, you want to make sure that you're jotting notes. So important when you're doing a listing presentation that you actually situate yourself in the kitchen. A lot of times they'll want to put you in the living room, and I think it becomes a little bit more awkward, to start having a conversation and showing them comps. One of the biggest lessons, one of the younger agents in the office asked me to go with her to a listing appointment. And so I did in Alexandria. And this was her, first listing presentation. And she was nervous. And I said, it's going to be fine. Just go in there. I'm here. If you bump into any problems, I'll jump in. And we sat down at the kitchen table, beautiful little townhouse. I think she would have had it. I think she would have gotten that listing appointment. She would have gotten the listing. And the one thing that when we sat down to do the presentation, she asked the seller, I'm going to show you the comps, but, I'm going to pull them on my computer. Can I get your Wi-Fi code? And the seller said no. Right? And so always, and I was having this conversation with my husband just yesterday because, new year, we're trying to do budgets, home budgets for us. And he's like, you keep paying for this hotspot on your phone. I don't think we need it. It's like $20 a line. And I'm like, no, I need it. Because I will never walk into a listing appointment expecting other people to give me their Wi-Fi password. Some people are very particular about that. And from the body language to the tone of his voice when he answered her, she lost the listing appointment right then and there,
How do you set up to start your Wi-Fi? Do you automatically go in and send your hub up and say, oh, you can use mine?
Well, I always have it in writing. Always in writing, right? As a backup, if I need to show them, maybe the condition of another property, because obviously when you have the comps in writing, you only have the front of the house, and that's about it. But if you're able to have your iPad or I have a Surface Pro, I will log in through, my hotspot, and then I'll pull everything up and, kind of show them, so they can see the inside, but so important to be prepared. Think about all the different scenarios, and that's being one of them. Bob lost a listing appointment because he didn't take his shoes off. Some people, if you see that they have their shoes up in the front of the house or as you're walking in, then you probably need to do the same. And he says that he'll take his shoes off all the time. And people are like, you don't have to take your shoes off. No, I'm taking them off. I'm not walking in your house without any shoes. Because that kind of scarred him. He's like, I'm never going to lose a listing because I didn't take my shoes off. So, things that you learn throughout, as you get more comfortable, but things to definitely be aware, And then just, again, if there's a way, and Shane, do you guys have relationships with home stagers that come into the office? And yeah, so get in front of them yesterday, and start talking to them and start understanding their process on how they do things. And then when that you should include them, maybe some will want to do the listing appointment with you. Maybe some will do it after. You want to make sure that you understand that, because if you have a listing appointment and you already know the expectations of the home stager and how they can help you, then it may just be a matter of, well, since we're going to move forward with the listing, let's go ahead and schedule and coordinate that date for the home stager to come and take a look at the house. I can book my stager, right? So I'm not leaving the house without already having set that appointment up. So think about things.
And also what it does too, it takes the pressure off of you. You have the bad guy tell them they got to remove M's at the dining table.
Yep, exactly. And there's been some homes, people are different. Some people are very visual. Some people can see past furniture and paint colors and selections. But you don't ever want to lose a qualifying, willing and able buyer because they just were lost with how the house was decorated. That's a huge opportunity, right, that you've missed out on. And it's so important to, like you read the questions on page 20, like questions to ask the seller, and you think a lot like, well, I don't know if I should really ask them. These questions are there because they're powerful questions to ask, What's the most important thing you're looking for in a listing agent, right? Maybe they just, they want to trust you. Maybe it's honesty. Maybe it's, you never know what will come out of people's mouth, but it's good to ask. What prior real estate transaction experiences have you had? Because like we said, a lot of times some people get into this industry because they've had a horrific experience, right? And so they can make money, I can too. Or it's because you want to educate yourself on the home buying process and the home selling process. You want to be an educated consumer, right? How would you like for me to be communicated with, right? That's a very important question because some people don't like text. I think it's a lot of times like, maybe, I've done a whole transaction via text, because of the age group, millennials, different, but some, or maybe they're, overseas. How many agents do you know that have sold a house to someone that's not even here? Like it's all based on FaceTime, right? Because they have a need, they need to buy, and maybe they're stationed overseas and they need to buy something quick. So always ask, and then any communication that you have with other agents, with lenders, with title companies, with anybody regarding any transaction, if you happen to have a conversation on the phone, always document it in writing in an email because, we tend to be like big flashbacks for like lawsuits. Everybody thinks that realtors are made of money or full of money or, and when they sue you, they're suing the brokerage, they're suing everybody, right? The home inspector. And so you want to make sure that you have all your accurate records in writing, and even if it's just to reiterate the conversation you had on the phone, so important. How frequently would you like an update? Okay, so if you're the listing agent and you're having an open house, do they want to know that night? Do they want you to give them feedback every time somebody shows the property? One of my clients said, you know what, just add me to, they've sold homes before, right? It's not their first home. So they said, you know what, on HomeSnap or, on the app, just share the feedback with me, right? I'm like, are you sure? Because sometimes agents can be a little too upfront with their feedback. And she's like, nope, we want to see it. Okay. So every time somebody showed the property, I forwarded the feedback as it came because it's asking them questions about the condition, the price, do you think this is something that will work for your buyers? And then any other comments. This particular listing had smaller secondary bedrooms. Well, that's a condition of the home I can't change. I can't, move the property up to the front of the acreage. I can't do that. And I can't make the bedrooms bigger, right? So that was the common feedback that I would get on that listing. And they already knew. They're like, oh, it's the bedrooms and where the house sits on the lot. Yeah. Is it too high? Price was too high. Price was too high. Price was too high, right? And so they actually did a price reduction based on all the feedback that my colleagues provided me, and empowered me to have that conversation. And then, what are you most concerned about in marketing? Some people are finicky. Some people may not want their address out on the internet, right? I used to use it a lot to but I don't do that anymore. I just feel like, Twitter and LinkedIn and, Facebook are a much better way to advertise properties than really Craigslist. That was kind of way back when. I don't think anybody uses that anymore. But your mobile app, your KW mobile app, if you're hosting an open house for an agent, and it's not your listing, you can definitely look up the property through your mobile app and share that. I'm hosting an open house courtesy of, Shane. I'm from KW, Falls Church. Come visit me at da-da-da-da-da-da, right? You should be sending that mobile app to everybody, that You want them to use that as their search engine. A lot of people will still go through Redfin and Zillow and Trulia. But, you have a good chance that if you direct one of your clients to Redfin or Zillow, for instance, if there's featured agents, you're not going to be shown anywhere they're going to be shown because they're the ones paying for the advertisement. With your KW mobile app, the only contact that they have is to you, right? Whether they like a property, whether they saved a property, whether they want to schedule a showing. It's got that open house app that you can use as well. I mean, it's huge. And they continue to improve it and update it, and something that you should be using every day. And then, we start talking about you as the agent, you as being affiliated with Keller Williams, and our technology backing, being number one, training organization in the world, being the number one in the world by agent count, your communication, what you're committing to do for them, as part of working with you as a listing agent. Any awards, that you want to highlight? I think when you join KW, one of the things that you should do every year, this is a perfect time to do it, is what am I willing to commit to, doing in my personal development? This is a huge first step. Being in Ignite and understanding, our terminology, our business models, our systems, our technology is huge. I had my partner in business, David Reffiningo. He managed an entire team for the biggest Long and Foster team in Virginia, and so he was managing 17 agents every day. So he had a lot of experience. And when I brought him over to Keller Williams, it took me 5 months, but I brought him over to Keller Williams. The first thing I had him do is take Ignite, and he said, "But I'm in management," and I said, "It doesn't matter. It's going to help you become Kellerized, and it's a huge foundational piece to our business." And after taking Ignite, he said that he was at Long & Foster all his entire career since 2007, and Long & Foster didn't offer the type of training that Ignite was for him. Like, it was huge, right? So this is a huge first step. I challenge you to, after completing boot camp and Ignite, to take Bold. I took Bold after being in business for 7 years, but I took Bold when I first joined Keller Williams. It was more of a mindset change for me than anything else. It took me a little while to get licensed in Virginia because, of my Texas business. However, I took it, trying to learn more. I'm very learning based. And I think I fought it the entire 7 weeks or 8 weeks that I was in Bold, because when I came here and I understood that this was a very different market, that the average sales price in Arlington was like 1.3, there was a big negative mindset, that I wasn't prepared to be in this market, that I didn't know enough, that I didn't know anybody, that I had to start all over again. And after going through Bold for the entire program, I said, well, maybe I may be new, but it doesn't mean that I can't be good, right? So I just have to commit to learning the industry. And I was previewing every week. Every broker open, we would get them at the office, and we'd have the pamphlets ready after the team meeting. I would get 5 or 6 and that I would go and preview. And that's a great way for you to start your habits, right, of understanding this market. If you have a buyer who is looking in Leesburg, go preview Leesburg properties. Same thing in Arlington, same thing in Great Falls. Commit to that every week. It's an educational piece. Especially when you're hosting open houses, if you're there and you're not the listing agent, you want to know as much as possible about that neighborhood, right? Chances are that when they walk in, they're probably going to ask you about the other active open properties as well. So you want to make sure you're coming from a valid place. So now let's listen to the master and let's watch Josh Bath with the listing presentation.
You want to do that? We take a break, or take a break after? I think it's a good break.
Oh, well, we can take a break now. Yeah.
Come back to the video?
Yeah. Go for it. 5-minute break. Works. I feel like a robot.
Thanks, Shane.
Jeff from Vancouver, Canada. I'm with Keller Williams for 8 years. I've been selling real estate for 18 years. Now I'm going to walk you through my listing presentation, and it's a 3-step process. The first part is preparation, the second part is presentation, and the third part is follow-up. A lot of my listings come by way of referral and repeat. And so when the call comes in and they want me to come over and list their home, I have a conversation about what their needs are. What exactly is it you're looking to do? Are you moving up? Are you moving down? I have them tell me exactly what the reasons are that they're selling for. I get a real sense of what direction that they want to go. When setting a little easier as we time blocked. We follow what Gary says. He says time block everything that you do. And we time blocked our slots in advance for listing appointments. Every day, Monday to Friday, we have a slot available at 4 o'clock and a second slot available at 5:30. So I've got a potential of 10 listing appointments Monday to Friday. That makes my life a lot easier because I'm able to time block my lead generation first thing in the morning and not have my day so loose and scattered, so I'm trying to scramble on where to put a listing appointment. What we do now on our team is we decided to go paperless with our evaluations, our CMAs. So instead of printing off paper, what we'll do is we'll take it on the computer and convert it to PDF, mark it up with a highlighter from there on the computer, and then create an email from that. Email that package off to our client prior to going out to their home to list it. What I do when I go on a listing presentation is I meet the sellers at the door, and I have them take me on a tour of their property. During that time, I'm actually asking them to tell me again, to recap again, what their motivation is for selling. So I'm getting them more comfortable with them moving out of their house is what I'm doing. That usually takes about 5 minutes. And when we're done there, we transition right over to the kitchen table. We'll talk about the market, the evaluation itself, and that in itself is about 15 minutes. Once we have agreed upon a price that we're going to list at, we'll sign a listing contract. They sign the initial 3-page contract, they sign the property disclosure statement, and they sign the working with a realtor brochure. Outside of those 3 documents, that's it. I send in my measuring company to come in and measure the home. I send in my stager who's going to contact them to come in and stage the home. And once she's done, then I send in a photographer and take the photos of the home. We always do a follow-up with them as well, just to say, how did that go? What was that experience like for you? Keeps them feeling like they're in control and very much a part of the process, and it lets them know that we're paying attention to every detail on their listing prior to it even being on the market. One of the expectations that I set with the sellers is that I phone them twice a week on purpose. So I set the expectation for me to phone them on Monday mornings with what's called a Monday morning update, where I review everything that's happened for their home over the past weekend with them. The second call that I've set them up for to expect is on Fridays, and that's a Friday morning market update. And what I've set them up for is that I'm going to talk to them about any new listings that have hit the market, any expireds that have come off the market, and any solds that have actually just happened since that past week. They also know that on Friday, we're going to be talking about the numbers. Does the current list price that we're at right now still make sense in relation to the latest listings or the most current solds? They know in advance that that conversation could lead to a price reduction, and a lot of times, they bring that on themselves. They say, hey, look, you know what, it looks like we might be a bit high, Josh. Should we bring it down? So it's a natural transition to a price reduction. One of the reasons I choose not to do a pre-listing package is when I'm sitting in front of them, I really want their full focus and attention. I want their attention on me, and I want to be able to ask them questions where they're giving me their full attention and not flipping through a pre-listing package. Most of their questions are going to come straight from their gut, and that's really what I'm looking for. I'm Josh Back, and I just shared my listing presentation with you, and I wish you all the best with yours.
All right, great video. So give me a couple of ahas from the video that you think you can incorporate into your business. What are some things that resonated with you? Time blocking. Mm-hmm. Right. What else? I think what I liked is that Monday update and the Friday market, right? So I would that's actually something I'm going to steal and put into my business plan and into my calendar. Because I think sometimes with, especially when you're dealing with 5 or 6 listings, something can take you off course. And you mentally may think, right, that you're going to, you're purposeful about wanting to call and give them an update. But unless you see it on your calendar, you're not going to do it, right? Things happen, especially when you get to the office and, you know, you start chit-chatting by the coffee machine and, oh, like, oh my God, it's already noon. It's time to go to lunch. I tend to get very distracted, which is why I always keep my door closed. You know, I love to talk to people. That's my only problem. And so one of the things that I purposely have time blocked into my calendar is the listing appointments, right? The listing appointments. I time block my lead generation time as well, because if it's, and you know, when we talk about lead generation, we talk, for instance, for us on our team, like Mondays or, you know, follow up on leads that came to your open house, right? You know, Tuesday, call your sphere of influence. Wednesday. So we have a systemized approach on how we lead generate so that it becomes, you know, I mean, very clear on what we need to do. And when it's clear and it's easy, you'll do it. You know, when you are vague about your lead generation, right? So if you write on your calendar 9 to 11 lead generate, well, you're going to get there. You're going to be like, well, who do I call? Like, what do I, you know, what do I say? How do I say it? So it's always good to, you know, to add the specific lead generation that you're going to do for the day, and then incorporate those 2 listing appointments. I actually have even like recruiting times, you know, time slots. And I share my calendar with my business, you know, my business partner, David, so that, you know, a lot of times when I'm doing recruiting appointments, I'm bringing him into those appointments with us. When we're doing listing appointments, especially when a lot of these leads come through the internet, and I don't know anybody from, you know, diddly, I always try to bring him with me to any listing appointment, you know, so that I have somebody there with me. He never asked me to go along with him because I think he's fine. Go by myself. I'm like, I think you should come from, you know, a safety perspective. So anyhow, market, you know, updates, huge. You know, if you're not, I think you should call your client and talk to them about the showing activity that, you know, that's happened in the week. I also think you need to email them in regards to how many groups and, you know, what was the general feedback on the showings. Any follow-ups that you have with any potential, you know, hot candidates that you think may be looking at writing an offer on the property. Even follow up with agents that have shown the property. I know that from, you know, an MRIS perspective, that HomeSnap sends them that little survey. But if you're showing like 6 buyers and and you've shown 16 properties in the weekend, chances are that you'll probably won't come back to give the feedback. So I always like it when agents call me and I call them for feedback, you know, just to remind them. And then you start talking about, well, the condition and the price and what do you think? And, you know, so it's actually more information that you're able to provide your sellers, you know. Like he said, if you read the material in Ignite for today, you know, in the material it says that you should do the preview of the property by yourself, like the walkthrough at the listing appointment. You know, you heard from, you know, this man, Josh, that he doesn't. He actually has the sellers take him through the house. I've always had my sellers take me through the house. And I feel awkward leaving them in the kitchen and kind of roaming on my own. And again, it becomes a great time to break, you know, the ice with them and start getting them to talk and feel comfortable with you as they're taking you to the space, asking them about updates that they've done, upgrades, when they did it. I think when you're proud of something, you love to talk about it, right? And so those are the things that, you know, you want to hear from them. Because there may be something that a potential buyer, you know, may like, or you may want to highlight, you know, in the listing notes. And then one of the things that by practice, I always carry like my own listing presentation, and I have one for them. I never include the CMA. I never leave the CMA with the sellers, especially when they're going to be interviewing a couple of agents, because I don't want them to shop my range versus, you know, the listing price that I've recommended versus the other people coming after me. If you can, always try to be the first one, you know, at the listing appointment, be the first at the interview, and go for the close. I mean, you think that a lot of times just making a general comment about, well, I would love to list your property. And they may say, well, we're going to interview other people, right? Go for the hard close, you know, and if they say, well, we're going to interview other agents, just say, okay, well, what didn't I answer that you still have a question on, right? And that's going back to learning those seller objections, right? That you'll see in the back of the chapter. And when I leave with my CMA. I never tell them what price to list. I give them a range. Now, I don't give them a big range. I give them, like a $5,000, to $7,000 range. And then I will tell them, like, together, we'll go ahead and set the price. Bob has this, little system that he uses. So he'll write the sales price that he thinks he needs to list at. And he'll put it, he'll cover it, and he'll say, okay, what do you think the price of your home will list for? And so, once they give him their range, then he said, brings up, his range of what the list price needs to be. And then he goes, okay, tell me how you came up with this price, right? You probably have more evidence of why you're bringing up this range in list price than they do. A lot of times they'll tell you, oh, well, Zestimate said, and Zestimate isn't always updated as much as you have access to, live data on MRIS, right? So again, that's always one of the things that I'm always prepared to answer. If you look at the Zestimates are updated maybe once a week. I mean, so the accuracy of the data can be outdated by now, right? And so a lot of times they're like, oh, well, probably right. Exactly. It's a very general, I had a listing lead come in on our website, and usually when they say, it'll ask you, did this person select the agent? And if it says no, then I know that I'm probably the next on the rotation, and it's this random lead that I got. And this one said yes. So I called the gentleman right away. It was a listing, a home valuation request in Arlington. And the gentleman said, I said, oh, I'm with Keller Williams, Cito agency. Oh, I know Keller Williams. We bought our house through a Keller Williams agent way back when, about 4 years ago. And, turns out that I think our home valuation site estimated the property at like 1.8 million. And I said, he goes, I offered, I said, I'd love to meet with you to get you a more customized, home value for your property. I'd like to set up an appointment to go and tour the property with you. And he said, well, I think I have a good range, from your website. And I said, well, I mean, I'm sure it's a great starting point, but the more I know about the home, the better and more accurate data, and value I can give you. And so he really appreciated that. He's like, oh, okay. He goes, well, I was just curious. I'm not selling anytime soon. I'm like, that's fine, but the goal is to get in the house and take a look at the property and start that conversation with them, right? So yeah, you're absolutely right. Zillow's not in there looking at, the nice updated bathroom that you just did, or the granite, or, so yeah, make sure that you walk through the property. Bob is huge on this. He says that he will make a presentation is like detailed from start to finish. I am not going to show up to a listing appointment with a dirty car. I won't park in the driveway. I will park across the street, so that I can see the property as I'm walking up to it, as opposed to, I think in your driveway, it's a little personal, it's like, so definitely, think about those things. You're showing up for an interview. So, I mean, even from appearance, you need to look, you wear your suit, you wear, a nice business attire, because this is the first impression, right? First impression is everything. Same thing with the home. First impression the buyer gets when he walks into the house, whether there's a smell or there's, pet fur all over the place. I mean, you want to make sure that you have that in place. Understanding the CMA and how you present it is very important. A good CMA doesn't have to be 25 pages. A good CMA is about understanding the comps, understanding, how they compare to this listing, getting very, very accurate, data. And that comes through practice. So make sure that you're constantly, I think when I was a new agent, I would always do comps on my own house. I was just going in there playing. And then explain the process, right? So obviously when you're sitting in front of them, you want them to write, to sign the listing agreement right away. If for some reason, they decide that they still want to interview other people and they call and you ask for feedback and you get the listing, And now it's coming, Virtue.loop or, whatever process, DocuSign. Make sure that you explain that process to them, that I'm going to be sending you the listing agreement electronically through our .loop system. I'm going to get all your contact information and send that over. If you have any problems, let me know, right? So that they understand a lot of times technology can either play to your favor or against. So the more information you give them on how the process works, the better. And then, obviously when you get into the house, you want to thank them for having you there. It's their home. It's where they live. You want to be able to walk through the house. Use the home tour checklist. This is huge. If you, and it tells you, you can download it through KW Command. I know that MRIS also has one. It's on page 24. And it's basically a checklist of, everything that you would need to know about the house, about the exterior, about how many stories, how many bedrooms. I always print out the tax record, and I have that with me as well, so that it gives me more information as to when they bought the house, anything like that. But this is so important because you don't want to get the listing and be like, well, was it gas or was it like natural wood fireplace? Like it's all the details that you forget about, like once you walk out of the house. So having this with you and just checking off, a lot of times I'll tell them, as we walk through the house, I'll probably take pictures with my phone. They're not the listing pictures, they're mental notes so that I can go back and reference, and they don't have a problem with it. But this is, there's one, like I said, on MRIS. It's a little longer. A lot of the information doesn't necessarily pertain because it'll talk about farms and, broad. This one is short, sweet, and to the point, so I would definitely use that with your pre-listing, information. Yeah, talk to your sellers. Obviously, like I said, your first impression is, as soon as you walk in the door, it's showtime. You want to make sure that you're on. You want to be able to exude confidence in the fact that you're the expert in that neighborhood. You want them to do business with you. Again, share your price recommendations. Like Josh said, he doesn't send a pre-listing packet. Again, this is just tools to help you. I think as you start organically getting into business, you'll realize what you're comfortable with and how you want to structure it, whether a pre-listing packet is something that you want to do or not, going with a full listing presentation. Set the expectations for, again, market data, what it will be to be working with you, up front, that you will be giving them a call on Monday and that you'll be giving them a call on Friday. They definitely appreciate that because they're not, they entrust that you're the listing agent. So I doubt that they're going to be tracking which expireds came up on that Friday or, so they're going to look at you as a resource and you want them to be waiting for your call, right? Keeps them engaged. And like Josh says, when it comes down to a price reduction, we've been talking about this every Friday, right? It's not just like, oh, well, we've been on the market 30 days. I think we need to drop the price. It's that weekly touch. And then, the entire listing presentation is 42 pages. Not that you have to go line item by line item on the listing presentation, but you want to make sure that as you're going through it, that you're able to talk about every section. I would spend more time on the questions, of really getting clear on the motivation of them selling than so much about, Keller Williams. And they know Keller Williams. We've been around long enough to know. And then, really going through the process of understanding what conveys. Huge. You know how many times agents have had to buy a refrigerator or a washer because they accidentally checked it off? Or maybe the chandelier that they told you specifically would not convey, you say it conveys, and then all of a sudden you're buying the chandelier for your clients, right? Easiest thing for you to do is in the listing agreement, it has, a section of items that will convey, right, all the appliances. And so make sure that you have that available with you. And I would almost even copy and paste it into the MRIS documents so that there's no confusion. The buyer agent can go in there, click on it, and see exactly what conveys with the property. Especially when, like, for instance, one of my listing has like 3 refrigerators. I have one in the basement, and then an ice maker in the bar in the basement, and then one in the storage area because he brews beer. And I had to specify that only the refrigerator in the kitchen conveys with the property, not the additional ones, right? So it's pool tables. Like, that's something that a lot of times people forget about. But a lot of sellers don't want to take a pool table because, it's just a whole process, especially when they're in the basement. So you always want to ask, okay, what in this room will convey with the property as you're taking the tour? And then they'll tell you. I think the builder, a new home that I'm going to be closing on next week, they left like the curtain rods, right? Which is really nice because they're set up so high. I mean, this used to be a model home, right? It's got built-in speakers in every room, and I mean, just gorgeous home. And they said no, they're going to convey with the property. So it was a big little bonus, for my buyers that they don't have to put in curtain rods because those get expensive. The bigger the house, that means a lot of windows in the house, right? So that's good. And then, when it comes to, on page 28, when it comes to your seller's guide, to selling your home, if you go into your KW and you do the e-edge, you can customize this. You can add, if you already are working on branding and you have a logo, you can add your logo, you can add your website, your mobile app. You can save it as a PDF, or you can print it out in a nice color material. So really up to you. But take the time to really learn the scripts from starting the conversation with them and then moving them past, to actually signing. On page 30, uncover the priorities and prioritize the seller needs. Again, this is kind of walking you through the process of asking lots of questions. Listen more than you talk. So when I was a team leader, my agent services coordinator actually posted something on my desk that would trigger me to stop talking. It says, why am I talking? Because really what I'm supposed to be doing is asking more questions than I am talking about Keller Williams. And so every time I would, end up going on my tangent, I would see it, and then it would remind me that I needed to stop talking and let people talk. So always be conscious about how much time you're spending talking versus your clients. And don't assume lots of questions because I just want to make sure I'm very clear on the motivation and make this experience a wonderful experience for you. I don't think anybody will tell you oh, you're asking too many questions. You're really there to help facilitate the process. And, some examples on page 31, that it's all about you. Why are you moving? Do you need to sell within a certain time frame? Do you have a price in mind that you think the house will sell for? Are you staying in the area, after the home sells? Good to know. A lot of time you'll find that information as you're going through the process because, like my clients, I had already moved. The house is sitting vacant. So I know that they're now in Pittsburgh, right? And they've already bought. Yes, sir.
So this is just kind of a process question.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a seller who's also a buyer with you,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so you have both transactions with them, is there a preferred process in terms of, is it best for them to sell their current residence first or to buy another residence first?
I think it depends on the situation. So,
What tends to work best for most people?
I would say the clients I've worked with, if we've put in an offer, we've put in an offer contingent on them selling the house that we're listing. Because you want to make sure that they're always protected and that you're not closing on a new home and now they're 2 mortgages, right? And a lot of times, again, for a lot of listings, some sellers that may be okay because they're contingent on something else, but you see how this can get very hairy very fast when you have clients that are also contingent on other home purchases.
Do you ever have the conversation with the seller saying, or seller buyer,
Mm-hmm.
We may find ourselves in this situation. Are you comfortable with having 2 mortgages for?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
3 months, 4 months, 6 months.
Yeah, because some people that can be perfectly fine. They're financially prepared. and I probably already understand that that's going to be the situation. For some, they may not have, the finances in order to take on an additional, mortgage, right? And so it really is, it goes back to asking really good questions, right? And understanding exactly what that looks like for them, in regards to it. But everything that any person that I've represented, in that scenario has been a contingency on them selling it, just because it protects them a little better than, just going straight into a ratified contract. And most people will want to close. It takes about 30 to 45 days to close a contract anyways. And if you price it aggressively, then it's going to sell pretty fast, right? If it's overpriced, then I would really advise them not to to do a contingency on on the home sale contingency on the purchase. Mm-hmm.
So you post those rental.
Yeah, Right. And that's really, if the buyer's, is willing to do that, So for my buyer in Fredericksburg, we're doing a pre-occupancy lease with the builder because my client has to be out of their apartment in Arlington, right? And the house, and we can move the closing up because the title work is still not done for the builder. So I said, well, can we do a pre-occupancy move-in? And they said, yeah. So they're going to be moving in and they'll just go and close. And you have to understand the process, right? Because like for instance, this buyer, we had the walkthrough with the construction manager on Thursday. So he's walking around, and we bought it as completed. So, they'd gone and retouched paint and, all that good stuff. And with the pre-occupancy, we were supposed to do the final walkthrough the day of closing, where now, we've kind of opted from doing it because they're moving in earlier. So they're basically just getting the rest of the keys at closing, So, and that, since it was the first time I was working with this builder, I made sure that I called, to understand that process up front, before committing my client to it. So, because you'll get the questions, right? You'll get the questions like, we did our final walkthrough and our option addendum says that they should have Kenmore washer and dryer on pedestals, front loaders. So we walk in and there's no washer and dryer. And I'm like, hey, Mike, when the washer and dryer are going to be delivered? Well, he's a construction manager. He doesn't know about work orders. And he said no. And I knew that was going to be the first question my clients asked when they got there. And so sure enough, he asked. And, I said, Mike said, I'm following up with our sales manager, on where they are, but they should be delivered in the next couple of days. So, and then I just had to confirm. Like my husband says, and God we trust and everybody we verify. So I made sure that I called right after I left and said, hey, TJ, I need you to, confirm the delivery of the washer and dryer to include the pedestals. Like, because details, it's in the little details that, and we don't want to cause frustration on our clients, right? And I think that sometimes this is why people think that being a real estate agent is so easy, because we make the process so easy for our clients that they don't understand the sleepless nights and the stressful moments that work. Delivering a 10 plus experience. So really all this is, serving as your notes. What is important to you? If you could, if we could just do one thing, the other thing has to make sense about your experience. If you could add just one more thing for the experience to be a 10, what would it be? Maybe it's calling me, emailing me, and texting me. So I know I keep up with my communication. That might be important for people that travel a lot, right? So the more repetitive touches, the best. And then I would spend some time learning on page 35 of why Keller Williams Realty, what, the benefits of being affiliated with this company, our track record, our knowledge. Not only are you representing your business, you're also representing the brand of Keller Williams. And so you want to make sure our technology. I mean, if you guys have heard, Keller Williams is making a massive amount of investment in technology. In order to help you manage your business, at a higher level. I cannot wait until that comes out. I think eEdge is awesome as an initial, like CRM, especially for the marketing pieces. Gene Rivers shared the way that he uses eEdge. So he says that anybody that him or his agents actually, any contacts that they make via open house, website, anything like that, they automatically go into eEdge, and they start them off on a drip campaign right away. He's got a separate CRM. I don't know what the name of that CRM that he uses. But for instance, I use Contactually as my separate CRM. And anybody on that CRM is people who are my past clients or my sphere of influence, right? Because ideally, you want to keep the integrity of your past clients and your sphere intact, right? So what Gene Rivers does is he will keep everybody on the eEdge campaign, any customers, any contacts, and he will only move them once they become a client into Contactually, right? So that when he does his A+ a winery tour, or Bob every year does a trip to New York City over Thanksgiving holiday, he will call all his plus A clients, that have given him referrals after referrals after referrals. They filled up 2 charter buses, and they meet at the Bob Lucido office in Ellicott City at 6 in the morning, and they serve them mimosas and breakfast all the way up to New York. They drop them off in New York, where the big tree is, where Rockefeller Center. And they'll say, okay, enjoy your day in New York. We'll meet back up here at 6:30, 7 o'clock. And everybody gets to play and shop and tour and take pictures. And at 6:30, gets everybody back on the bus and gives them wine and cheese on the way back. And so is he going to do that for the entire database of like 2,000 people? Probably not, So that's where having a really clear, understanding of how your database is organized is so important, So because you get to treat them a little nicer for giving you more business. And then on page, 38 and 39, it's really about getting to know you, your experience, communication. We talk a lot about communication. We talk a lot about the experience, the marketing, the pricing, huge. Technology, staging, right? So if you don't offer staging just yet, you'll not highlight that, right? But if you do, which you should be, go ahead and talk about it. The home selling process, so servicing, and marketing the property. There's so many different ways of advertising now a home. For instance, I use a system called Back at You Media. It's like $99 a month, and it helps add content to my Facebook business page, to my Twitter, to my LinkedIn. It's specific to your area. So, for instance, I can probably be sitting here and my websites already have content in them that I didn't produce. At first, when I first got into this industry, I thought I had to do everything. I had to create a blog. I don't have time. Hopefully, if I'm doing a really good job, I'm spending a lot more time in front of people than behind the computer. And I found this company, and it's Back at You Media, $99. It pulls my listings from the MLS. And so I can actually share it on Facebook and Twitter, whether it's a price reduction, an open house, just sold, under contract. And I basically, it'll say, do you want to create a post? Yes, and I'll add a couple more, my phone number or my website, personal website, and it sends out, and you can actually program it. So if I'm going to do an open house, I can already set up all the posts and then program it to go out on Friday at 5 o'clock in the evening, and it'll be sent out. So find ways of leveraging your business. You don't have to do it all. If you can start off by using a transaction coordinator, do it. It simplifies your life. I think the first couple of transactions you should want to do on your own so you know the process. But if you're doing this and you're going to do this at a high level, leverage a lot of that it's not your 20%. It needs to go elsewhere kind of thing. And then, marketing, like I said, think about doing broker opens the first week the listing is live, open houses, eEdge already has all the templates for you in regards to just listed and just sold and open houses. So there's really nothing that you should be creating organically, Everything should use eEdge. Everything's already there for you. Everybody's got their profile set up, right, on KW.com. Yeah, cool. And pictures. Everybody's got picture on there? Good. I think the most important part from being a listing agent is definitely the offers and being able to present offers and then the negotiations, right? This is where I feel like we earn our paycheck right there, and making sure, because anything can fall apart, only because it's ratified. Like my husband will always tell me, like, well, when are you closing? Well, I'm not there yet. Like, let me get through all the contingencies and all the negotiation periods, then I can celebrate, And even at closing, I'm still like, we did the final walkthrough, like we're almost there, like, breathe. And sometimes you have to coach your clients. It is, amazing. Like my client in Fredericksburg really liked the house, was being a little stubborn. And you do have to coach your client sometimes, right? So we're sitting there, we've seen every house, I think, in Fredericksburg and Stafford area, and this is the one that they want. She loves it, and he's not feeling like warm and fuzzy with the builder. Like he's not getting that, And so we said, we're going to look at one last house. And after this, like, I need a check for $5,000 because we know that that's the house we're going to go, we're going to ratify on. And she's like walking out of that. She's almost running out of that last listing I showed them. And she's like writing me the check. Like, I'm getting my checkbook. And so she's writing the check. And my client goes, I think I still want to go back again and take a look at the house. And she goes, no, we're not. We're not going to go back and look at the house. And I unfortunately had to, leave at that time. And I said, now, Elvin, you're going to go out there. You're going to look at that property, but you be nice. Don't say anything to the contract, to the sales rep. I said, because anything you say, if I'm not there, like I'm not held liable for. And she goes, Carol, I'm not taking him back to go look at the house. This is it. Here's a check. Go, run. So a lot of times you have to coach your buyers and your sellers on, especially when you have some sellers that don't, like, sometimes are there in the house, which I never encourage them to stay for a showing. But you just want to make sure that they are just smile and wave. Let me do my job. And that goes back into like the offers and negotiations and communication, even with the other agent. And then contract to close. You guys have amazing partners here in the office, for title company, mortgage company, even better, because they'll keep you in the process. I always love working with our partners in the office because if I have a question, they're down the hallway from me. I don't have to track anybody down, So make sure that you're leveraging those relationships. And then the other thing, especially with newer sellers on page 45, in order to have a smooth closing, you almost want to have the expectation dialogue on what sellers typically pay for in regards to, fees and, you want to know how much they owe on the mortgage, right? And hopefully if you're ratified, the title company's already sent you a payoff, sheet to fill out so that they can get an accurate payoff. Is there prepayment penalties, right? If they pay off the loan early? Depends. I mean, I'm not seeing that. Usually not. Way back when in like 07 or 08, yeah. Other claims against the property. Is there a mechanics lien, right? You don't want to find out at closing that there's like a mechanics lien on the property. You want to make sure that you're asking all those questions. Any unpaid special assessments on the property, is good to know. I had the listing in Manassas and clients are gone, right? And I get an email from the HOA saying that they hadn't paid their invoice for the HOA assessments. So they actually used me in order to get in contact because they knew that they weren't living there anymore. And it was an oversight, and my client wrote the check right away and sent it in. But that could have, put a cloud on us being able to have a smooth closing. You want to make sure that you have document stamps for taxes on record, especially when it's kind of, depending on when property taxes are paid. I had a little condo in Alexandria that I sold, and he had just paid the property taxes. So I needed to make sure that the transaction coordinator and the title company knew, and I had to show them proof that he just paid them in full so that he would be reimbursed at closing. So a lot of times it takes time depending on, the county, on how they update their records. So that could have been a gap where, the buyer could have paid it on that end too, and my seller had just paid it, So avoid all those. Any legal fees, title insurance premiums, anything like that. I always ask a buyer, the listing agent on a property, if they have an existing copy of the survey. And I always ask, how long it's been, since they've gotten that survey. If nothing's been done to the house to change the footprint or anything, a lot of times it'll save you $500, for the buyer. But if not, then I really do encourage my buyers to get a survey on the property, all the closing documents, after closing, make sure that the following, for tax purpose, you have all closing docs and that all improvements, home improvement receipts on the home, that you just sold. A lot of times now with the home inspection, contingency addendums, you have to provide receipts of any work that was performed on the home, especially when they've asked for those specific repairs. Anything that's electrical and plumbing, you have to get a certified contractor on. I mean, you can't call Uncle Joe to come fix it for you, only because he's a great handyman. You want to make sure that you have those receipts. And then, at closing, you want to make sure that you have all the house keys, the garage door openers, pretty simple stuff, They have their IDs. If they've already moved out of the property, for instance, my clients in Manassas, they're already in Pittsburgh. A seller part of the transaction is very short and sweet. You just sign, as opposed to the buyer, it's a longer, settlement. So I told them, I said, for you to come all the way over here for like a 15, 20 minute sign, do you just want to go ahead and do, a mail out closing? And she's like, well, we wanted to take you out for dinner. I'm like, well, you can take me out for dinner when you come back into town. You don't have to do this special trip, She just got elbow surgery, so she's doing a lot of therapy. So they're going to be doing that. But the more information you have up front about what that process looks like for them, then the more information you can give the title company. So as soon as we determined that they would do a mail out, I called the title company and said, okay, they're doing a mail out. This was like a week ago, and we don't close until the end of the month, but at least they understand that they have to mail it out before closing, have documents back in for the buyers to close. Same thing with home warranties. I mean, those are, typical. You want to make sure that that's been ordered and, buyers are ready to go in that regard. A lot of sellers will pay for it, and if you're working with buyers, I'm sure you're asking for it, as well as part of, your services. Some of the factors to get your home sold, definitely the condition, very simple, the marketing, and, pricing the house accordingly. Those three things. And then on page 49, it basically talks to you about the condition of the property, what they should do. This could be a really nice seller checklist. Make sure, before every open house, right, that the grass is freshly cut, especially when, when you get the listing and you're scheduling photography, so important. We had an agent that said, yes, the house is ready to go. Awesome. Photographer goes out there and the house is not ready. And so not only did it cost us $300 to get the photographer out there, but an additional $175 to send them back out there to go do a reshoot. So again, things that can be avoided, right? So make sure that, even if you schedule the photographer, just say, dear Mr. and Mrs. Seller, can I stop by, today just to go do a final walkthrough before the photographer gets there? Because a lot of times they live in the house, so they don't see things. We had a picture that had the garbage, the trash can, on the side of the house, the garage bin, and so it's we could have moved that, so little things. But in the pictures, it's a thing that pops out, right? It's why is that there? That looks out of place. Painting the house, cleaning the house. A lot of times what people oversee is the door frames. So get a Mr. Clean and make sure that all that looks really nice and white and pretty, and there's no fingerprints. You want to make sure that they clean the carpets. A lot of times, if you've done any previews, you see that a lot of agents leave little booties so that you can put, if they've just cleaned the carpets, just a courtesy, use them. Make sure that the lights are turned on. And photographers are great. They're a great part of your team because they'll tell you, depending on, the sun and, what time they can be out there so that the pictures are not so bright or so dark or, and I'm always in there with them moving furniture and, helping them with the blinds, just because I want to make sure the pictures come out really nice. Marketing the home, you want to make sure that you have your for sale sign out there ASAP. Once it goes into KWLS, it'll syndicate, to a bunch of different websites, which is great. Sometimes in KW the listing hub, there may be a little bit of a delay. So that's why, we tend to want to put them in on Thursdays so that it has time to syndicate. I had one situation where it was syndicating everywhere else, but we had inputted into, technology, it's not perfect. It's going to fail at some point. And it never syndicated on Keller Williams, listing hub. So the open house was never advertised, right? So you want to make sure that not only you click submit and go live now, but that you actually go back and verify that it's been done. Use your mobile app, create the flyers, do your open house feedback forms if you do it. I started using paper forms, and then I figured out that I'm not the best at decoding people's handwriting. So now I use, I just didn't understand the email address, or it was one wrong, it was an I instead of an L, or and so now I do Open House Pro on the iPad so that it's easy to get their contact information. If you have an iPad, that would be the way to go. And you can easily upload them, export it, and input it into eEdge afterwards. In the eEdge, the way that I use the groups, I group it by open house, and then I do open house and then property address so that 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 specific group of people came and visited you at that address, and then you can add them on a buyer drip campaign, which makes.
Does that Open House Pro work on Windows stuff too? Do you have a tablet or just iPhone?
I think there's a way to get it on that, but I would double check. I use it on my iPad, and again, it's got some basic questions already built in, but you can actually customize and add more if you wanted to. So just a great way to build, like some solid, good contact information. If you do just listeds, those are great. People do every door direct if you're going to farm, in that particular listing. Seems to be like it runs about 18 cents a postcard with postage and everything. And that's where going into like industry conferences, like Family Reunion, like Mega Camp, like NVAR Convention, a lot of these vendors are there. So you can see the type of marketing content that they can provide for you and the cost associated with that. So it's good to know. Open house schedule, that's crucial. That's probably the first thing you'd want to do as soon as the listing goes live. And if you have active buyers that you think that house would be a great fit for, great, send it out. Send it to your sphere of influence. I think that's a piece of the business that people don't send just listed, send just solds to, because they're like, oh, well, they're my friends. Well, send it to them because that'll probably trigger a conversation about your real estate business, Have your Facebook business page set up too, right? That's so important so that you can actually provide content about real estate as, through your website. And, again, providing detailed weekly feedback to your sellers. You don't want to get the listing and then they don't hear from you, right? In weeks and weeks and weeks. So make sure you're always, make sure that they're coming up on Zillow, Trulia, all your listings have accurate information. On page 55, we talk a lot about pricing again. You want it to be aggressively priced to create interest and attract more buyers, generates more leads, more showings, more feedback. A competitive price is not based on what sellers hope for. The price is not what sellers want or need from the sale. Price is not what sellers paid originally. This is coming up. So I had a listing in Burke, and they bought the property in 2008. And so they bought it very, very high, right? And so now they're looking at selling, and they're just looking at the same number they paid for way back when. And it's, a lot of that is starting to, come into play again. So make sure that you can talk through well, you paid what you're going to sell it for now, 10 years ago.
$200,000, you haven't made any progress.
Exactly, right? Because you think about it and you're like, well, everybody, most of people move every 7 to 10 years. Well, guess what? This is a time. And so it's a great niche to go after, by the way, if, they've made some equity and some progress. But this is now where I'm starting to see it come up more and more often, right? That they're looking at contemplating selling it.
Just based on my own experience, I think
Yeah.
a lot of people are now just getting to the point where they're getting close to what they paid for it.
Right.
With a little bit of equity.
Yep.
I mean, because I keep looking at that going, okay, so if I want to sell my house, this is what it's going to cost to sell it in terms of commissions and things like that. And so if I sell it now, how much am I going to walk away with? Absolutely nothing.
Right. So, God, that's a tough one, but be prepared for it, because this year you'll start seeing a lot more of it, right? And hey, if you can provide them value to say, well, you may not even have thought about it yet, but look, you're coming from underwater now, like you're breathing air now, maybe a good thing. And you'll have sometimes, I had a listing appointment in Gainesville, and same thing, bought in 08, 09, overpaid for the house, not at that time, but, then the market tanked. And I think I wanted to list at like 525, nice master plan community. And she said, and I said, well, what do you think the house is worth? She says 579. And I was like, and I guess I must have given her a look. She goes, but based on your facial expression, I'm probably off. And I'm like, yeah, a little bit, and so you have to spend the time to talk to them. And what ended up happening with this particular seller is that she over improved the house, and that can happen. That can happen. You can over improve a house where it can have, 24 karat gold floors, but the market is the market, and it's not going to justify another $70,000, from the rest of the comps in the neighborhood. So, there's a balance there where you want to improve it, but you don't want to over improve it, because then you're going to be overpriced and you're not going to be able to sell it,
You want to be the best house in the neighborhood.
Yeah, right. And that's why previewing is important. It goes back to well, okay, I understand that you've updated the bathrooms, but the one across the street for $30,000 less is just as pretty, right? And it has the same upgrades. So, and it's an emotional process for a seller, believe it or not. So, you have to be conscious about that as well. She's like, yeah, I know. And then I think that you're going to have a separate breakout on the comparative, the CMAs, the comparative properties. But this would be on page 47 where you would want to include, that information on there. The recommendation, again, this is a great, on page 59, recommendation for your home, pricing your home, a detailed custom market analysis, the unique characteristics, the expertise, in you being in that area, average sales price, average, sales price per square foot, recommended. I do. Sometimes, a lot of times that helps, for them to understand the price per square foot. I do an average sales price range, because you can typically get a little range for it. And I've never had a seller say no to my recommendation, right? Listing documents. Here's the other thing that you want to be very, right now, grab the listing agreement and go through it and read it and read it and read it. It should be in your, in your backpack, in your business bag. Same thing with a buyer rep agreement. I don't sit there and read word by word by word, but I can walk through the entire agreements, and highlight the most important things. So you want to make sure that you're very comfortable with that process. It is a legal document, right? So you want to make sure you're understanding it. The seller's disclosure document, pretty simple. Has there been any updates that you know of, yada, yada. Sign. This is a form, the seller's disclosure, that you also want to add to MRIS and documents, so that it's already there available for the buyer agent to get it signed by the buyers. What to expect, quick little checklist on page 65. Do you have the sign in the yard? Do you have a lockbox? Have you posted it on MLS and KWLS? staging consultation, professional business, professional photos taken, flyers created, scheduled the open house. Make sure you use that as your checklist. And then really it's, practicing the entire listing presentation from start to finish, right? So right now that, hopefully you guys are super, super, super busy. But if not, then this is a great time to start putting it all together and practicing it, from start to bottom. And then I think the most important thing in this chapter really is memorizing the seller objections on page 78. Spend some time, memorizing those and reading those, and because you will hear maybe one or two of these objections, at a listing appointment. So you want to make sure that you can speak, you don't have to sound like a robot. Just, get the general idea of what, the objection is, and then, the conversation I have with them. If you want to think it over, I hear you saying you want to be confident. If you were 100% confident in me, you wouldn't be bringing this up, right? So it's a great way to formulate the conversation because you want the listing. Don't ever forget to ask for the business. My first client buyer, I took, he was a young guy, military, was looking to buy something in Austin. And $300,000 condo in Austin was a big thing back then, right? So I take him out there, took him the entire day. I remember it was really cold, and I took him to Starbucks afterwards, and I said, yeah, so what'd you think? And he's like, oh, it was good. And then he goes, aren't you going to ask me? And I said, ask you? And he says, I want to write an offer. And I'm like, oh, I never again forgot. Every showing that I have, is this the one? Are we writing a contract on this one? Right? So don't forget, people want to be asked. So don't forget to ask for the business. But other than that, guys, that's a wrap for me. I finished about 20 minutes early. I hope you guys don't mind. If not, we can sit here and practice objections. But thank you so much. It's been an honor, spending the morning with you guys. Again, I'm here to be a resource. I'm sure I'll be seeing everyone around more often. That's my contact information. If you guys have any questions or if I can be of any assistance to you, feel free to reach out. All right. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Have a great day. Stay warm out there, too. It is very cold.
It's not as bad as
No, yeah, it wasn't as bad. Can somebody type something and I don't know. I'll have to ask Shane.